Disclaimer. This morning, Donald Trump woke up preparing to bomb Iran. By noon, his own Supreme Court had bombed him first. At 10:03 a.m. Eastern Time, February 20th, 2026, in the United States, the Supreme Court issued a 6-3 ruling that will be studied in law schools and economics textbooks for generations. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the majority, ruled that Trump's entire sweeping tariff architecture, the one he spent his entire second term building, the one he used to bully nations, threaten allies, and claim he was rebuilding American economic dominance, was unconstitutional, illegal, void, dead. The law that undergirds those import duties does not authorize the president to impose tariffs, the majority ruled. One sentence, 9 words of legal reasoning. And Trump's signature economic strategy, the weapon he used against China, India, Canada, Mexico, the European Union, and the entire world simultaneously, was erased. And here is the detail that makes this historically unprecedented. Chief Justice John Roberts said Trump lacked the peacetime authority to use IEPA to impose tariffs. The IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, is a 1977 law designed to give presidents emergency tools during genuine national security crises. Trump used it to declare that trade deficits were a national emergency. Roberts looked at that argument and said, no, the word regulate in that law does not include the power to tax, and the word importation does not give a president unlimited authority to impose whatever tariffs he wants on whoever he wants at whatever rate he decides for as long as he chooses. Roberts observed that Trump's interpretation of IEPA would give the president power to unilaterally impose unbounded tariffs, unconstrained by the significant procedural limitations in other tariff statutes, and free to issue a dizzying array of modifications at will as long as he declares an emergency. Unbounded, unconstrained. That was Trump's entire theory of presidential power over trade. And 6 justices, including 2 he personally appointed, just said no. Donald Trump blasted Justices Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett when he was asked if he regrets nominating them. I think their decision was terrible, he said. I think it's an embarrassment to their families. You want to know the truth? The 2 of them. The President of the United States called his own Supreme Court appointments. People he nominated himself, people who owe their seats to him. An embarrassment to their families on camera in a press conference. On the same day, he's supposed to be projecting strength as he prepares a military strike on Iran. Now look at how the financial markets reacted. Because this is where the story gets genuinely surprising. When a president suffers the single biggest legal defeat of his term, you would expect markets to be uncertain, nervous, possibly down. That is not what happened. Companies that had to pay the tariffs may be able to seek a refund from the Treasury Department. Hundreds have already sued. The moment those words circulated, the moment investors understood that $175 billion in illegally collected tariffs might flow back to American businesses, stocks surged. Markets celebrated because the tariffs weren't protecting American workers. They were crushing American importers, raising prices on American consumers, and making American businesses uncompetitive against foreign rivals who didn't face the same cost increases. The people who make your sneakers, your electronics, your furniture, your car parts, they pay American presidents tariffs. And today, for the first time, they have a legal path to get that money back. But Trump is not done. Not even close. Stay with me, because what he did within hours of the ruling, and what it means for the Iran war clock still ticking, is the most important part of this story. Within hours of the Supreme Court ruling, before the ink on Roberts' opinion was even dry, Trump stood at a podium and announced he was imposing new tariffs anyway. Trump used a different law to impose a 10% across-the-board tariff. The court struck down tariffs imposed under the IEPA Emergency Powers Law, so Trump immediately pivoted to different legal authority. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which allows tariffs justified on national security grounds. Same result, different legal hook. Different enough, his lawyers told him, to potentially survive the next court challenge. Trump exceeded his authority by invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to justify his sweeping reciprocal duties targeting America as trading partners, as well as separate levies aimed at China, Canada, and Mexico. But the decision does not affect all of Trump's tariffs, leaving in place ones he imposed on steel and aluminum using different laws. So here's the real picture, stripped of spin. Donald Trump lost the legal foundation for his biggest, most aggressive tariffs. The reciprocal tariffs that hit every country in the world, and the fentanyl-related tariffs hitting Canada, China, and Mexico at 25%. Those are gone, but steel and aluminum tariffs survive. And Trump immediately tried to rebuild his demolished wall using whatever legal bricks remained. Whether those new tariffs survive the court challenge that will inevitably come, and it will come within weeks, is a question no one can answer today. Now look at the financial magnitude of what today's ruling actually means. This puts more than $175 billion in U.S. tariff collections at risk of having to be refunded. A Penn Wharton budget model economist calculated $175 billion. That is the size of a mid-sized country's entire GDP potentially flowing back out of the U.S. Treasury to the businesses that were forced to pay it. Trump suggested the administration doesn't plan to refund companies that paid for his tariffs. I guess it has to get litigated for the next 2 years, he said. 2 more years of litigation, 2 more years of uncertainty for every American business that imported goods from China, Canada, Mexico, or any of the dozens of countries that faced reciprocal tariffs. The legal clarity that today's ruling was supposed to provide has been immediately replaced by a new legal fog. The fog of a president who lost in court and responded by signing new executive orders and refusing to acknowledge the practical consequences of his defeat. And now connect this, because this is the connection nobody in mainstream media is making clearly enough, to what else is happening within the same 24-hour window. Trump is simultaneously managing the biggest domestic legal defeat of his presidency and the 10-day countdown to a potential military strike on Iran. Both crises are live. Both are escalating. Both require his full attention. And both are now feeding into each other in ways that make the geopolitical situation dramatically more unstable. Here is why. Trump's entire strategy for building a coalition around the Iran confrontation relied on economic leverage. Countries that refused to join his pressure campaign against Tehran would face tariffs. Countries that bought Iranian oil in defiance of American sanctions would face 25% tariffs on everything they export to America. That economic coercion was the stick he was holding behind every diplomatic conversation with India, China, Turkey, and every other country that has been quietly continuing to buy Iranian oil. Analysts noted that probably the largest ramification is what happens to Trump's negotiating powers, as other countries may believe that he's lost his leverage on trade talks. Lost his leverage. That phrase from Fortune's economic analysis is the most consequential sentence in global geopolitics this afternoon. Because the stick Trump was holding over every nation that wasn't fully cooperating with his Iran strategy just got ruled unconstitutional by his own Supreme Court. China knows it. India knows it. Turkey knows it. Every country that was quietly weighing the cost of defying Trump's Iran pressure campaign just recalculated the math. And the math now looks very different. And into this exact moment of maximum American domestic weakness, Supreme Court ruling overturned, tariff leverage stripped, allies refusing bases, Iran's supreme leader appeared publicly on Iranian state television to personally rally his nation. Trump chose to announce that he is pressing forward with strikes anyway. And while Trump was being humiliated in the U.S. Supreme Court, Iran's supreme leader appeared publicly in a mosque in Tehran, leading Ramadan prayers, giving a religious address, visible, calm, and present on the exact day American intelligence was reportedly still trying to confirm his location for targeting purposes. It was a deliberate signal, not just to the Iranian people, but to Trump, to Netanyahu, to every intelligence analyst in Washington trying to build a decapitation strike target package. He was saying, I know you're looking for me. I know what you're planning. I'm not hiding, and I'm not afraid. That image, the 85-year-old supreme leader standing in public, surrounded by worshippers on the day American aircraft carriers are positioned outside his country's waters, is worth more than 1,000 press releases. It tells his military that leadership will not abandon them. It tells his people that the government is not paralyzed by fear. And it tells Washington that the psychological premise of a decapitation strike, the idea that killing the leadership creates a power vacuum that causes the system to collapse, does not apply to Iran in the way it applied to Iraq. Now stack everything that has happened in the past 24 hours, because the accumulation of events tells a story bigger than any individual headline. Trump's tariffs, his primary tool of global economic coercion, ruled unconstitutional 6-3 by his own court, including 2 of his own appointees. Governors demanded refund checks for families. Others called the tariffs an illegal cash grab that drove up prices and hurt working families. The domestic political backlash is instant and enormous. Britain has refused its military bases. Arab states have refused their airspace and soil. Russia has leaked America's missile deployment numbers to Iran. Russian bombers flew near Alaska. Iran's supreme leader appeared publicly in defiance of targeting threats. And Trump, facing all of this simultaneously, announced new tariffs using different legal authority within hours of losing in court, called his own Supreme Court justices a disgrace to the nation, and confirmed that strikes on Iran remain on the table before the end of the month. The president ended this particular Friday evening attacking members of his own judiciary by name on social media while his military was briefed. It could be ready to begin bombing a foreign nation by the weekend. This is what maximum overextension looks like in real time. A president fighting legal battles domestically, diplomatic battles across every allied capital, military standoffs on multiple fronts simultaneously, and losing ground on every single one of them in the same 24-hour period. The financial markets understand this, even if the political commentary doesn't. A chief economist at Wolf Research said that for consumers, the practical price impact of the ruling is essentially nothing, because Trump has other tariff levers to pull. Markets surged not because prices will immediately drop, but because the ruling exposed the limits of one-man economic governance. It proved that American institutions can still check executive overreach. And that proof that the rule of law still functions in the world's largest economy is itself worth more than any individual tariff rate. But here's the question. Everything leads to, is Trump stronger or weaker tonight than he was this morning? By every measurable metric, legal authority, allied support, diplomatic isolation, domestic political capital, weaker, significantly weaker. And a weaker Trump approaching a war he was already warned against by most of his own advisors, with a tariff weapon the Supreme Court just took away, with Britain and parts of the Arab world refusing their bases, with Russia feeding his war plans directly to Tehran. That Trump is more dangerous to the world, not less. Because a president who feels cornered, humiliated, and stripped of his tools does not de-escalate, history says he escalates. The 10-day clock is still running. The military says it can be ready this weekend. Iran's supreme leader stood in a mosque in Tehran and didn't blink. And the Supreme Court just reminded the world that even in America, even now, no one person gets to hold unlimited power. If you want sharp, fact-driven analysis of the forces shaping global markets, geopolitics, and economic power, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel Economic Records. Thanks for watching.